bounce. It's all about the bounce at the end. That really gets the show going. Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to episode 71. This will be our, maybe sort of a sour wild ale episode, where we will also be talking about a barrel project that myself, Jordan, and Drew of Doster Brewing Co. now had going on for. God, when did we start this? Maybe like 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, at least I'd
Yeah,
say.
had to have been.
15-gallon journeyman barrel is what it started off, and I think we did a stout, and then maybe a barley wine, and then another stout or something. I think
That sounds right.
maybe before we decided to clean the barrel, ruin Drew's sump pump,
Wait.
and then sour it. Did you not hear about the sump pump?
I did not.
Oh yeah, there's little charred bits in there if you're not paying attention. When you go, we figured we were gonna kind of like sterilize it with like boiling water before we started trying to get a sour culture going. And
okay.
But when I went to clean it out, it was like little tiny bits of like charcoal that just made like a block in my my sump pump, and killed it basically. So
that's no
had
good.
to get a new one.
Guess lesson learned for number one.
Exactly. So anybody watching that plans on cleaning a barrel, you already know, don't dump it down the sink. Do it outside or something. Yeah.
Yep.
So it's Oberon Day.
Oberon.
I got some Oberon. What are you guys drinking?
I have some Oberon, but I'm actually starting this time. Usually I start with like a hams or something, but I actually have some hydromel. This is my honey beverage, so I'm sipping on that, and then I'll be off to the Oberon.
Is it sour hydromel?
Yeah.
But
it is pretty tart.
I'm working on my rye IPA. I didn't get a chance to get out today, so I haven't got any Oberon yet, but I will.
When Jordan, when you said you had Oberon, you mean this year's, right? It's not some.
I checked. I did. Yeah. Because I went over to my this looks like February 22nd. Was its bottle date. But yeah, I went over to my local grocery store, and usually there's like a display for it on Oberon Day, and like there was nothing. I was like, did they even have it? Like I was about ready to head over to Mega Bev, and I was like, I haphazardly like walking through the cool area, and I'm like, oh, they have like 2 6-packs in like the normal area, just nonchalantly sitting there. I'm like, I had to check. I'm like, they don't have a display. Like, is that last year's? Did they just hold over some in case they weren't going to get any? But no, they actually did. They did. It is this year's Oberon. So happy. Had one with dinner. Delicious. Taste the spring.
Mm-hmm. It does. Our one Twitch streamer or Twitch person is back. So
hey,
that's welcome every Monday. We see you, buddy. Appreciate you stopping in for why ever you're here.
I'm version 1.0, I guess, and you guys. I don't know. I guess then it's Jordan, and then it's you, right?
Sure.
He's got more length than I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about our barrel first, I guess. Do you want to talk about our barrel first? Do you want to talk about like sour beer in general? Just sort of like
let's start with the barrel.
Okay.
Yeah, not to interrupt you, but we were already kind of talking about it earlier. So like Drew, I think you're the one who picked it up. You want to give us like the backstory on it? Like how'd you find it, where it came from?
Yeah, so I think Chris O'Neill over at One Well had reached out to Keepers of Craft, the homebrew club we're involved with, of course. And Journeyman had just done a batch of, I believe it was like rye whiskey, actually. And so they had a bunch of 15-gallon barrels that they were selling, which one well took a bunch of them to make some bourbon stouts and things. But then, they kind of offered to pick up some additional ones for the homebrew club, since they were shipping a truck out to get it anyway. So I think a few of us got in on it, and then we figured, 15 gallons is a great way to split a batch, between 3 people. So I think that's how we got into it. And I want to say the first thing we made was kind of like a Prairie Bomb sort of clone.
Oh, we did do that. Yeah.
And I thought it turned out really well. And then, but eventually, after a couple uses with a barrel, unless you recharge it somehow with like more bourbon or something, you kind of lose pretty much all of that whiskey character. And then I think we were like, it'd be a shame to have this barrel go to waste. And so then we started our sour project. I'm trying to remember all the different cultures we put in there.
I wish we had taken better notes, because I was trying to think of that earlier too. I know that we have some bells, La Brett du Vide, is that what it's called? I think
it was at the Le Batteur.
Le Breton, maybe.
Le Breton.
Yeah. I thought we had some wild one.
Yeah, wild one.
Yeah, wild one for sure.
Yeah. Did we get some Jolly Pumpkin?
I think so.
I
know there was a full pitch of Suburban Brett from Imperial, because I think one of the homebrew competition years everybody got a free thing of yeast or something, and I picked that up because I knew we were kind of trending that way to do that with our barrel. So
I feel like, Brian, you and I were at a bottle share, and somebody brought a bunch of Soursmith bottles.
Yes.
And I feel like we took like 3 or 4 of those, and you stepped up the dregs for it too.
I don't even know if I stepped up the dregs, but I definitely remember at the very least we pitched some of that in the barrel. So,
I stepped up some wild one dregs. I remember doing that for the barrel too. So it's really a blend of things.
So I guess that's kind of one of the cool things about making sour beer, is that it's not necessarily like regular brewing, where like you have this recipe and you sort of know what the outcome is going to be. Like, you're going to make this American IPA with these sort of hops, and it's in general going to taste like a beer that you've had before. The like a culture in a barrel is sort of like a living thing, and every time you put in wort, they can come out tasting a little bit different, just based on oxygen exposure and maybe different nutrient conditions and temperature conditions, and whether you're doing like a more of like a red ale or a blonde ale. And we've had some really, really different beers come out of that barrel. And one of them, I think, Jordan, you still have some, was a like a red ale base.
Yep. I still have some of that.
And I'll have to try it again. I used that. I thought it was like really, really Brett Ford and almost too overpowering to like drink. And I used that to blend into other sour beer to sort of remove all that intensity and give the other beer sort of more character. And that worked really well. So I don't know. I think that it's making sour beer, not even necessarily in a barrel, but just like at home, is sort of like an art form. And it's exciting because even though you have to wait a long time usually to get something drinkable, it's sort of fun and worth the wait, and it's really not expensive at all, especially compared to what the end product is. But speaking of the barrel, Drew, you have a sample of our potentially very last original OG 3-member brew for it, right?
Yep.
So he hasn't tried it yet, apparently. So I guess give it a shot. Give us a live read on what you got there.
We'll see if I'm like puking in the trash can. I think it'll be good.
It has been sitting for a while.
It's been a while. It's probably been too long, but as long as it doesn't taste like vinegar.
No, I'm not getting vinegar. It's almost got like a light kind of appley pear thing going on.
I feel like I remember that like the last time we tried it had something like that going on. Okay.
I think it's quite enjoyable.
There we go.
So one fun thing I'll say, some folks might be wondering how I got that little sample there. So there's a trick, sour makers do, where you can take a nail. You can drill, you want to get a drill bit that's just a little bit smaller than the nail you're going to use. Ideally, you'd be getting like stainless steel for that and stainless steel for the nail, because you don't want anything to rust in your beer, right? And you also have the ability to kind of sanitize it, which is what we did with ours. So, and you just probably like within the bottom third of the barrel, you want to put it there so you've got a little bit of head pressure when you take the nail in and out. But once you have the nail in there, I just took a pair of pliers, pulled it out, let it kind of drip in there to get a little sample, and then you can push the nail back in, hit it with a hammer a couple times, and you stop your flow or whatever. But that way,
just to clarify, when you drill the hole, you didn't drill it with beer in the barrel, right? Or did you?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Well, actually, I'm not sure.
Oh, really?
I think if you were quick, you could, but it's probably easier when it's empty, right?
Well, if you seal the barrel, like if you pull the bung and like put a solid one on there, which is what it should be anyways, right? While it's aging, because you don't keep the airlock on it, right? Then it like there should be no downward pressure. So you'll get a little leaking, but it's not going to like spray out.
Yeah, it's a trickle basically. Like unless you're using a huge nail or something, but yeah.
So, we have something that we're going to do with the barrel now that we are putting our last batch through it. That I think is going to be kind of fun. And I appreciate you guys to agreeing to this. I think the details are still being worked out, but the idea is that once we empty our barrel, we are then going to. So I think we're going to start with keepers, and we're going to kind of donate it to our club, and we're going to get our club to brew a beer for the barrel to then bring to the Michigan Homebrew Festival. Does that sound right? Is that kind of what we agreed on?
Yeah.
And then out at the Michigan Homebrew Festival, we will somehow, I'm not sure how this is going to work, but we will then gift the barrel to the next club to then brew a beer with in that barrel and bring to the Homebrew Festival the next year. Or maybe it'll be, swapped around a couple times a year. Maybe once in the winter and once at the festival. I'm not 100% sure, but it's still being worked out. But I feel like we had a cool, fancy name for it, but I don't remember what it was anymore.
I like the idea of having it swapped at the Michigan Homebrew Fest. Like if there's I don't know, like I think Jason works with the owners. Like we could do like another like sour prize or whatever, and the winning vote gets the barrel for the year. Kind of like they have that keg. Whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Just spitballing, but yeah, no, I like the idea of that being like a traveling, living thing, because that's what it is.
It is.
Mm-hmm. It really is.
Well,
one of these days.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, and yeah, I mean that's one thing with the sour barrels is like as long as you keep putting product back in it, you don't let it dry out, right? So when we've done it, we've tried to get a batch ready, like we'd make our blonde ale or whatever, and then when we drain it, the blonde ale would be at a stage where it was ready to go in the barrel.
Yep.
And you can kind of reuse it indefinitely unless you get some kind of weird thing going on. But if you take care of the barrel and you keep it from getting dried out, it's just really cool.
So let's talk about that too. When brewing a base for a sour beer, there's quite a few options, but without being too complicated. Generally, what are we looking at for, like, say, like a blonde base recipe? Do you remember what we usually use?
It's pretty simple. I think one big thing to keep in mind, I'm gonna pull it up on my other screen here, but I think using like hops that have been aged is a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
When you're talking about traditional sours, which is what we're talking about, because you don't really, unless you're going for like a dry hop sour or something, of course that would be different. But when you're making that sort of base recipe, you want hops that have kind of lost pretty much all their sort of citrusy character. Otherwise, it kind of overwhelms things in the barrel.
Well, there's another good reason for that too, and that's that the bacteria that you'll be using to create, the lactic acid, generally has different tolerances for IBUs. So the two bacteria that are most common for making lactic acid are lactobacillus and pediococcus. Lactobacillus generally, I think, tends to like to be under like 10 IBUs, and pediococcus likes to be under 30. Otherwise, it generally doesn't really perform all that well. So that's something to keep in mind too. If you're using hops in higher quantities, you may end up with a less sour beer. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just one of the things that you can use to control, at what level you like your beer at. If you have a particular culture that just fucking loves to get sour, you might be able to, up the IBU just a little bit.
Yeah.
And balance it out, and maybe, get something closer to like, 3.2 pH instead of like 2.8 or something like that. So that's something to keep in mind too. But if you are using pediococcus, you probably want Brettanomyces in your brew as well. Pediococcus tends to produce a lot of other weird off flavors and components and stuff like that it will not clean up by itself, but Brettanomyces will. So, but it's slow. Brett does a lot of things pretty slow when it cleans up. So that's sort of a lot of the reason why some sour beers take so long to sort of mature. If you have like pediococcus in your sour beer, it can produce this sort of like, have you guys ever heard of like ropiness or seen ropiness in a beer?
Yeah, I've heard that.
You can Google videos of it and just see what like pouring a sick beer looks like, is what they call it. It basically looks like you're pouring like snot, like blonde beer snot. Like it's very, very viscous, and it will clean up on its own after time. But PDO is pretty well known for doing that.
Gross.
Yeah, super gross. But it's there, and it adds some complexity and stuff like that. It just takes a little bit of time. What'd you find for the recipe, Drew?
Oh yeah. So I'm looking at it. Looks like we did about 54% two-row, just pale malt. We did about 25% white wheat. I think that was kind of give it some nice body and stuff too.
Yep.
We did 10% flaked oats. I think that was kind of for the body too, of course. And yeah, we were all about the body on this one, I guess.
Yeah, I'm surprised. I'm very surprised.
And then 5% carapils. So this is like our barrel, or I mean our blonde version.
Yep. That blonde was really good, in my opinion. I still think I have a couple bottles left that I'm holding off to submit.
And then I'd left. We use Canadian red vine for the hops because I grow some of that, and it's and so what I had done basically is just left the hops out at room temperature for a couple of months so they get quote unquote cheesy, and they age, they lose kind of that spicy citrus character they normally might have, and it's kind of it's just there to kind of add balance and things.
I forgot whether we use that red vine. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I liked those hops, by the way. I used a few of those that you gave to me, Drew, because those are your homegrown hops, right?
Yep.
Yeah. There was a pale ale I did a while ago that actually turned out phenomenal with those in there. So good hops.
They grow like crazy. I mean, they outproduce. I've got 4 plants down at the family farm, and the Canadian red vine, I swear, does probably 50% more than the Chinook, and then the Chinook's about double the Centennial and the Cascade. So,
wow,
it really produces like crazy.
That seems like a really good hop to use if you just want, if you plan on doing a lot of sour beer and really just plan on and need, a lot of material literally just for some IBUs or something like that. That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
You still have any?
Yeah. I've got, I don't know, I probably have a pound maybe in the freezer still.
That's cool. Yeah, I'm just opening my second. I'll get into some sour beer in a minute here, since we're doing a sour beer show. But
well, when you were talking about hops, is one of the things you kind of got to be cognizant of with sour beers. I mean, it kind of goes back to the fact that hops were introduced to be a preservative in the first place, and like,
sure,
when you're making a sour, you're in a way you're kind of intentionally letting it, kind of funkify, right? So
yep,
it's a little counterintuitive to throw a bunch of hops in there,
100%. That's not to say that you can't do it, though. I think that, or at least after the fact, some of the more, dry hop sour, super interesting flavor, super good. But again, all that sourness is pretty much done by that point. So you're basically just adding flavor. You're not preserving or anything at that point.
Oh, I forgot one important thing about our recipe too. The mash, we mashed at 156.
So
and
I want to.
You can explain why we did a high mash temp on that one.
I do, and I want to even go further. That's even maybe a little bit low. Lower than what I do these days. I mash it closer to 160, 162 these days. And I use more wheat than what that recipe called for. But that doesn't mean that recipe is wrong or anything like that. I think that was just our first shot at it. And, and the beer was really good. But what the idea basically is that you want a lot of residual like sugars and dextrins and things like that for the Brettanomyces and whatever else in there to chew on. Generally, you're not just pitching like Brett and bacteria. You usually have some sort of like Saccharomyces cerevisiae in there too, and that sort of produces the initial base fermentation. You kind of pitch a strong colony of sac at the same time. Well, it doesn't have to be at the same time, but with these bugs and Brettanomyces and stuff like that, once the Saccharomyces has its way with all the sugar in there, and there's a bunch of residual sugar left, then it gives everything else its shot to kind of eat up and chew everything that's left. So you don't get this like really overpoweringly funky, crazy fermentation. You sort of have this clean-ish to start fermentation, which then matures and becomes something fun as it ages. So that's kind of been my goal lately. That's just what I've learned, since we started the barrel and stuff like that. I think now I have something like 60 gallons of sour beer in my basement in kegs. One of these days, maybe during the summer, I have to have you guys over and we can taste some sour beer. And I've been holding those to do some blending projects with. I don't have any tasting notes on them. I haven't done anything with them. I've been ignoring them. So,
what's
should be fun.
What's the final gravity you're shooting for before you throw it in the barrel?
I don't actually look for a final gravity, to be completely honest. I basically just kind of give it a taste. Well, so here's the thing too. I don't. Are you talking about before I keg it, or what are you talking about?
Well, so you're saying you mash it high and then you let the yeast, the standard yeast, not wild yeast, kind of finish doing its thing. And then you're left with probably a normal higher final gravity.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. So let's split this up. So this is the way that we do the barrel project, right? The barrel project, we all created a base blonde ale and we fermented it with something like USO5 or SO4. Just some dry yeast, cheap,
clean,
decent alcohol tolerance, clean. We let that ferment down until it was done, basically, until we had a stable gravity reading over a couple days, whatever that ends up being. Probably around like 10-20-ish would be my guess. Is like a good target. And then we took that 10-20-ish beer and then we put that into an inoculated barrel and then we let it do its thing in there. What I do at home is I co-pitch. So I get my 1050 1060 wort or whatever, and I cool it down and I put it in my fermenter and I'll add a pack of like USO5 or something, or saison yeast or something like that, and all of the miscellaneous bugs or dregs or whatever, and let that sit and do its thing altogether. The USO5 will create a strong colony. It will overpower everything else that's in that fermenter to start, but then once it can't process any more of those complex sugars, it settles out, dies, does whatever, and then all the while the Brett is sort of like establishing itself as it can, eating whatever the Saccharomyces can't, or in the lacto and PDO and stuff like that. And so those cultures then establish themselves, consume whatever's left, and then also, kind of die out or whatever. And then I'm left with my beverage. So that I usually sit on, for 9 months to a year before I even taste it for the first time.
Okay. So it works in stages because Saccharomyces, normal yeast is pretty fast acting. It has a quick doubling time, so it gets up to numbers faster. Whereas your other bugs will work towards the end. Yeah. So I can see how that would work with
pretty much. Yeah. And they're all doing stuff at the same time. It's just the Saccharomyces has such a bigger culture built up. Because I'm just pouring dregs of a few bottles in there versus an entire, pre-sealed whatever sachet of, yeast that's good to ferment an entire 5-gallon batch. So, yeah, the other colonies of the bugs and Brett and whatever, they're still building up while the Saccharomyces is fermenting and stuff. But then once the Saccharomyces can't do anything anymore, everything else sort of comes in and, has their feast. It's sort of like the ants picking, the rest of the meat off a carcass or something like that.
Yeah. No, that's
creating
cool. I've not
fun
done
flavors
the
at the same time.
Trick.
Tim, we owe you a hat. Jordan has your hat.
I
does have your hat.
was gonna say I asked because I wasn't sure who we owed a hat to. He was over here on Saturday, so I
Oh,
should have
was he?
given it to him then.
Okay.
Yeah. Damn it, Tim. I'm sorry, Tim.
We owe lots of people things still, and we have everything now for the most part. So hopefully we'll be able to get those mailed out soon. I haven't forgotten. Maybe I should send an email out to remind people. But then again, maybe if I don't, people can just be surprised when random shit shows up at their house. So.
Yeah, we
When you do
need
your
to.
co-pitch, what are you using for your fermenter? Is that a bucket? Is it a carboy? What are you?
Yeah. So glass is going to be the best with regards to um, oxygen and really not having that fermenter be O2 permeable. Where as much as you can prevent it. But
We're
it's
in
funny too.
VR.
I want to see us in VR. I'll have to do that one day. I'll have to go back and watch one of our YouTube videos. Tim says I'm watching you guys on the Oculus. We kind of just like punch the camera.
Yeah, exactly. 3D.
But I don't like glass, so I use it as little as I can. I think I have 2 glass carboys. And then the rest, I actually have PET carboys that I really like. They are still pretty good as far as like O2 permeability goes. I think that they're pretty much as good as like what a well-sealed barrel would be. So still lets in oxygen a little bit, but not too bad. I might be thinking HDPE though. I can't 100% remember. But they've worked really well. The only issue is then they're a little bit harder to clean than glass because with glass you can stick like an abrasive like carboy cleaner in there and just scrape the shit out of it. With these PET ones, you don't necessarily want to do that. I mean, I know there's sour beer that's going back in there anyway. So if it gets quote unquote infected, it's not that big a deal. But I don't want to infect it with something like acetobacter or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily want a bunch of super vinegary beer or anything like that. But yeah, I like something that can be well sealed like that. That's moderately expensive because again, you're going to have to be setting it aside for quite a while. You don't want to use a normal plastic bucket and set it aside for a year because those things don't hold out oxygen really well at all. If you wanted to devote a speedle to it, that would probably be the same as aging beer in a barrel, I think. I believe that those have pretty good O2 like ingress, like tolerances or whatever, but they're expensive though. You don't want to devote maybe a $60 speedle to sitting around for a year. So,
I mean, what's a barrel going to cost you?
True. But I mean, what's a PET carboy going to cost you? That's like $15.
That's true. You're talking about like PET, like one of those better bottles.
Yeah, like a better bottle.
Yeah, all right. So
and in fact, I think those are really good for O2 if I remember right. Way better than a barrel.
So with the barrel, just so folks know, of course, like we're not cleaning it between pitches. We're just kind of letting that last bit of wild yeast and stuff, leaving that behind. So when we put fresh, mostly fermented out wort in there, everything just steps back up again. So,
and that's a thing too. I guess you don't even have to clean your fermenter after you are emptying it. You can pitch, your brewed wort back onto the dregs of what you just emptied it out. It's something that people do. It's totally doable. I mean, it's all just sort of there's just a lot of art and experimentation, I think, to making sour beer.
You're creating your own ecosystem.
You really are.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it makes a difference if you're going for a different mix of cultures than you might be cleaning things out and trying something different. But
I'd,
in the
I'd
case of our
almost
barrel, it is what it is. Our mix of cultures is probably not really going to change a whole lot. It's more the base beer we're putting in, and
right.
maybe things we're doing after with it, dry hopping, fruit, whatever kind of
I,
thing.
I'd almost say like because sour barrels. Ugh, almost a little hard to say. I'm only 2 beers in. 3, I guess now. But there's so much there's so much life to it that's going on within that barrel. I'd almost say like if you're gonna change your pitch, I'd almost say just dial in the flavors that you want, take the dregs out of the beers that you like those flavors on, and then start a new project on it and kind of leave your old one, unless it's just rancid, and you don't like it and you kind of need to start over. But it will kind of come into its own over time.
So let's. I think we should talk about the elephant in the room, which is when you're dealing with wild sours. Uh, Me personally, I have a separate set of equipment that I use for anything that touches the sour beer. So I got my own siphon. I've got buckets that are labeled. I'm sure those carboys you were talking about are probably labeled as like sours or something, so you don't, mix things. But that's an important thing to do because you can have unintentional sours.
So cleaning and sanitizing is obviously the most important thing that we can do for any of our batches, whether we're making sour beer or not sour beer. And the same things like PBW and Star San, it's just as effective on Saccharomyces, our normal beer yeast, Saccharomyces cerevisiae and Lachantia and stuff like that. As it is on Brett and Pediococcus and Lactobacillus, like those chemicals will kill all of those things. The issue becomes the sort of material that you're using when you're brewing and fermenting. Like if you're using stainless steel and you are cleaning well, like you are disassembling your equipment and sanitizing and whatever, you'll probably be fine for the most part. Like 99.99% chance you'll be fine. If you're using plastic, plastic scratches so easily that not everything is going to get cleaned out all the time, always. So plastic makes it tough. Glass, on the other hand, there's not a whole lot of crevices in glass where things can hang out. So glass can be sanitized and cleaned and reused without much fear. So it all really depends on how comfortable you are with your brewing, and your cleaning and your sanitizing. I take that approach, Drew. I have a lot of separate equipment for a lot of the things that I do, but I do share some things. I have a stainless steel auto siphon that I use.
Mm-hmm.
And I use that with my meads and I use that with my sour beer. The thing is, though, is that I bake it in between the cleanings. So I will take the entire thing and stick it in my oven at like 250 degrees for like 15 minutes. And let it sit in there until it cools down and stuff, on top of sanitizing and cleaning in between uses, just to be double triple sure that I'm killing stuff. But yeah, it just comes down to your comfort level. I have a tap cooler that I use to fill bottles. I'm sorry, I have 2 tap coolers that I use to fill bottles. I have one that I use just for sour beers, and I have one that I use just for everything else. Just because when I send beers off to competitions, I am super paranoid about me not even necessarily cleaning everything out of the sour tap cooler. I can boil it, but I'm just so paranoid about it. I could stick it in the oven like I do my auto siphon, but for some reason in my head, it just my comfort level isn't there. So I don't know. It's weird, but
well, I think I brought a couple bottles to one of the keepers' Christmas parties, and I was like, yeah, I think it was like, maybe it was a stout or something. I was like, oh yeah, I made this stout. And then people were like, oh, I don't know, it kind of tastes kind of sour. And I was like, trying to figure it out. The bottling wand I used my sour one by accident to fill a couple bottles.
Crazy.
And and I filled them maybe like the week before, and like in that week or whatever, it took off in the bottle and
Yeah, it doesn't
started
take
like,
much.
like it's wild how that works. And it was just the culture in a little bottling wand. I mean, that was it. Like, and
Yep.
and I'd cleaned it even. I mean, but so I don't take any chances anymore.
I'm with you.
Yeah,
And I
Mark,
try to label everything to not get confused.
thank you for busting out some old beer, Mark. Yeah,
2019, man.
I know it
That's
sounds
good.
delicious.
Yeah.
Shane has given me some shit too. I have this habit, and so when I bake my siphon, sometimes I forget that it's in there. And so, Shayna will go and like start dinner that evening or something like that. And like preheat the oven, like 350, open it up to put something in the oven. And there's a siphon just hanging out,
Well, yeah. I mean, you don't want to like take it out unless you have a cooling rack or something. You just turn the oven off and let it cool down naturally. I
So
get
I
it.
have the same siphon, which you recommended to me, and
Mhm.
love it. But so are you putting the silicon bottom in there too, and that's
All of it.
fine?
Yep,
Okay,
totally. Yeah.
cool.
Yep. No issues. Bake the whole thing.
Good to
Right
know.
on.
I have been wanting to pick up one of those stainless steel auto siphons for a while.
The siphon.
Siphon.
Yeah.
A siphon. Yeah.
There's like 6 S's on the front or something.
S key got stuck down. It's just sticky. That's
Yeah.
Highly recommend though. Even if you're not doing anything sour, it's just so durable. Normal auto siphons. I think I went through like at least 2 or 3 regular auto siphons of the plastic variety, and in one little crack in those, and you lose your seal, and it just doesn't work anymore.
Yep.
So working with stainless and a little rubber is.
I'm still on my original, but it's old.
That's crazy.
I've gone through
That's
2
like
or
saying
3
you're
of
working
them
with your
too.
original hydrometer or something.
Yeah, no, I've went through a shit ton of hydrometers. That's
Yeah, might as well just buy like the 10-pack on Amazon now.
basically
Done with
like,
I guess there
accidentally
are.
drop it in the garage or some shit
Oh,
like
dude!
that.
And then the
Like,
beads get everywhere.
yeah,
It's awful. I guess there are plastic ones that do a pretty good job that are fall resistant, but I haven't picked one up yet. I'm going to one of these days. Next time I break one, I will. I have found though that at least with the hydrometers that I have, those little balls are magnetic. So I was able to just kind of take a magnet over the floor.
Oh, that's good to know.
And to clean them up, but
cool.
Yeah. So getting off topic, Brian, just because I saw you had something posted that you were selling, that I believe somebody spoke for already, along the lines of hydrometers. How many of us have like an alternate method of measuring gravity, but still use a hydrometer?
I mean,
I'll put it up.
I have a refractometer. I use that for OG, but I like using my hydrometer for FG, basically.
Okay. Interesting.
It's still just super convenient. So hydrometers are always just going to be like the end all be all easiest way to measure something. I mean, you literally just floating something in some liquid and reading a line. Like it's not hard, right?
There's no calibration.
Correct.
There's no.
It works whether your beer is unfermented or whether it's post fermented. Refractometers, unfortunately, once alcohol gets in there, they refracts light differently, because of the alcohol. So it's not necessarily 100% accurate without calculation. And I don't actually know how those calculations work. I think like it might be based on like your brewing and your refractometer, and there's like some calibration. So you can get it accurate. I know Art Conant made like a spreadsheet where he like did some crazy ass math and has like a really nice working refractometer calculation. But still, like it's not quite as easy or as accurate as like as a refractometer. And then there's a digital refractometer, like Brandon was saying. Tilt is basically just like a floating hydrometer that stays in there the entire time.
Yep.
Digital refractometer, again, like a normal refractometer, only good for the brew day, not necessarily post fermentation. Easy Dens is nice because it only requires a little bit of liquid, but you also sort of have to strain that liquid out through like a coffee filter or something, because you don't want it to have any CO2 in suspension. You don't want to have any little bits of debris in there that could possibly get stuck in the little glass piece inside the device. So it's extra steps to do that. It's nice in that you're not wasting, 250, 350 milliliters of product in a cylinder or something, but just it's extra work. So even owning a digital refractometer and an Easy Dens, I still use my hydrometer. I don't want to say quite often, but every brew day when I take a measurement, I still use my hydrometer to start to get my OG, and then I'll honestly use it on my beer to get an FG reading as well, just because I usually don't feel like screwing with the Easy Dens and busting out coffee filters and stuff. And I usually want to taste the beer too, and so getting a nice hefty hydrometer sample and and
exactly.
then letting it all fall out gives me a nice idea of how the beer is going to taste. I'm not just drinking little itty bitty sips.
I think that's kind of why I brought it up, because Mark said he's like keep spending money on other types, but keep going back to the hydrometer. Like it's tried and true, and there's just I don't know. I think Brian over here hit it on the head, like specifically with taking an OG. Like you can pretty much take your OG, right in the bucket or whatever, before you pitch your yeast, and just kind of see. You don't have to lose anything if you don't want to, as long as your sanitation's good. But taking your FG, like, I want to taste it. Like I want a good, I want to have a good like amount in a glass so I can sit there and taste on it if it's done, So and I keep, and we're way off topic here, but as is the show. But I mean, I think, you're almost, in my opinion, better off like Drew said, buying a 10-pack of hydrometers from somewhere and just being like, okay, I can be a little more haphazard with these. But
it's not by design, but I swear every time you get one sanitized and you set it up on a counter or something, that thing just finds a way to zip right off the counter before, and you're in the middle of doing things, and there goes another one,
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's glass. I mean, that's the whole reason why I'm not a huge fan of glass carboys. Like I own 2 of them, and I am paranoid as fuck anytime I'm carrying those things around, even though I've got like carboy carriers that are wrapped and, it's secure and shit's wrapped around my hands, but still, like, if I lose my footing real quick and knock it against the wall in my basement or something, that shit could explode. I don't really like that. But
probably
the
chemists or scientists fans could tell us, but like, is there a scientific reason why a hydrometer is made out of like the thinnest freaking glass like possible? Like, because if you drop, if I knock a pint glass over from 3 feet up, most of the time it doesn't break. What's the deal with that?
Yeah, I think I'm not sure.
mean, the thicker the glass, the more weight you're going to have to balance it out at the bottom, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And so I think to a point, and you want as little space on the bottom as you can, because you want your hydrometer to be able to float in as little liquid as possible, maybe. So maybe the goal is to make it's like a balance between precision and, you know, materials or something. I don't know. Yeah, I really don't know. You could probably say that about a lot of lab equipment, though. And people probably make lab equipment with the intention of it being used by, you know, people that are.
I'm like kind of curious if they make them
delicate.
out of like borosilicate glass, which is like what beaker's made out of. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if you've
Yeah.
ever dropped your beaker, but that shit bounces.
Yeah, they're sturdy.
But that's true. That's true lab equipment. That's what they make beakers out of in labs. Is, you know, it's tough glass. But I don't know. Maybe there's something to be said with the buoyancy of borosilicate, and
True.
yeah, they
But I mean,
they just can't do it.
I imagine if you can make it out of some sort of plastic, then you can make it out of, you know, borosilicate or something.
Yeah, probably.
I just make it out of stainless steel. Just make everything out of stainless steel. Like, stuff's
Then you can't see.
indestructible.
Oh, I guess
You
you
can
could just
clean
watch
it.
it on the outside.
Yeah.
There we go. There's an idea for somebody. If you want to make some money, develop a stainless steel hydrometer.
You're making siphons out of it now. like, come on.
What is? Oh, I wanted to copy that, not pull it up.
No, I was trying to do that too. Triple scale.
Oh, I will say one thing about moving to the which you wouldn't even, not necessarily pro equipment, but just
that's the plastic
adding
one.
a sampling valve to your fermenter so that you don't have to get the wine thief out, pop the thing open, and try and get a reading. Like, that's a game changer. Or like if you just want to taste it while it's doing its thing. Like,
so I think that's what makes kegging sour after a while kind of cool, is that so I keep mine under a little bit of pressure just to keep the lid on the keg sealed. But I just have a tap directly connected to a liquid out quick disconnect, and I'll connect one of those to a keg and just take a quick little draw and pop it back out. You know, and I have those labeled as sour, you know, pieces too. But it's nice to take samples off of those for, you know, aging or blending beers and stuff like that. There was some guy on Reddit like last month that has this prototype of some sort of party tap. I wish I could find it. That had basically a similar idea, just something you can pop onto a keg and get like foamless, you know, pours from, regardless of, you know, how carbonated it was. But yeah, I don't remember what the name. Gosh, all right. If I find it, I'll post it on our Facebook later. Because he's just some dude that's making them on his own. He doesn't have like a factory or anything like that. He's just prototyping stuff. But I know he has a website and a Facebook page. I'll see if I can track it down.
Yeah, do it. I'm interested.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't. Yeah, what was the topic again? We don't have Jason here to create our tickers along the bottom of the screen. Well, so while we're on the topic of you know, having beer and blending and stuff like that, like let's talk about that, I guess, a little bit. I don't know how much there is to say. That too, you know, is I guess an art form. You basically are brewing just a bunch of different base sours and sort of taking tasting notes and deciding what beer could taste good with what other beer and combining them by percentage or weight or something like that. I don't know what got me into deciding to want to do that a couple of years ago. Maybe it was just I got bored of
that book, maybe.
Yeah, Farmhouse Ales.
That's where I learned about that.
That and American Sour Beer are two excellent books. 100% pick those up if you have any interest in making sour beer at all. But by blending, and people do this with other beers too, not just sours. Like a side project does this with a lot of their stouts, maybe all their stouts. But by blending two different beers, you're able to get a beer that you would never have been able to get otherwise.
That's true.
Like to take, like, say you have like an IPA and a stout, and you combine them 50-50, like it's a beer that you wouldn't probably never have been able to make like on its own. Like,
I remember that from Bell's.
It's drinkable or not.
Yeah.
Oh,
what do they call that? X Slam or whatever.
Oh my god,
Hop
they did do that. I totally forgot about that.
That was good. That was
Yeah,
that was really
amazing.
good.
Yep. But that
I
just
miss
proves your
X-Slam.
point. Like that's not a beer that you're going to be able to throw some shit together in a fermenter and then make. It's like a beer only cocktail.
Essentially a black and tan, right?
Yeah.
True.
Oh.
Yep.
Black and eye. Black eye. That's what it is.
Black eye.
But then you can take it one step further, and we talked about adding hops into the fermenter at the end, or or keg or whatever. But you can. It's kind of just like with mead or something. You can add pretty much whatever you want to the beer at the end if you think it makes sense and it's going to fit the flavor of your beer. So fruit is obviously a really, really big one. I just poured that guy.
That looks pretty.
Mm-hmm.
This is my latest sour that came from the Claw barrel, which is another barrel project that I'm a part of. It's just a 55-gallon barrel. And I blended this with the very last bit of our red Brett, like Flanders-ish type beer. So I think it was maybe like half a gallon that I had left or something. And then what I actually did,
you shart, bro.
Is that really what it is? Was that the red one?
That was what he had on tap at Homebrew Fest.
I brought to the Michigan Homebrew Fest.
It was good,
but that was the
tart.
Yeah, I mean, like almost heartburn level, I guess is.
See, mine never got that tart.
Loved it. Like
mine,
I came home with a mostly empty keg.
That's cool. Yeah, we had a lot of guys out there, people that liked our sour beer. We did good on that. But yeah, I mean, you can add varying amounts of fruit. You can add varying amounts of spices. Vanilla, hops, bourbon. What if you think it makes sense? Again, it goes back to the sort of artistic part of it. Like, just kind of go for it. If you've seen the stuff that Speciation puts out, like every beer that they put out has some crazy ass thing in it, like red wine barrel aged Flanders red with fenugreek and cinnamon or something like that. Like,
That's I will say, just as an off, as an off. I have not seen enough red wine barrel aged stouts, and most of them that I have had have been quite good.
Red wine barrel aged stout.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't know if I've ever had one.
I think I've had 3. I think the first one I had, I think it was somewhere in Canada, and then I've had 2 of them here in the States, and I think it just mellows everything out. I don't know. It's been good.
Fruitiness too. Maybe.
Yep. Yeah, a little bit of fruitiness. Yeah. Yep.
Those are even harder to come by than bourbon barrels, I think. Like
Yep.
Excuse me. I think that St. Julian has something like a 1.5 or 2 year wait list for a lot of their barrels right now.
Jesus,
but I think
really?
I think you can get on a wait list for their used barrels. I remember seeing it quite a few years ago when I was looking into it.
No, they're probably the 55 gallons, though.
Yeah,
they are usually, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't see many. Well, that's a thing too. You don't see many wineries making small batch, wines in 15-gallon barrels or something like that.
That's true.
To our great sadness, but that's not to say that we, as homebrewers, you cannot buy a 15-gallon barrel, new, freshly, cobbled or whatever.
I like where you're going with this.
Yeah, make your own wine, fill it, age it, and then use it afterwards. I haven't made wine in a while, but
I'm for it.
Yeah, maybe that
Well,
can
and
be our next barrel project.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm all for it.
I would argue barrels are kind of more fun, but there is spirals and chips and things like
Yeah,
too
yeah.
as an option. If you're like you don't have the space to do something like that, then that's always
No,
an option.
I would agree there. Being somebody who doesn't have a whole lot of space in their basement, I'd love to have a number of barrels in my basement, but chances are if I'm putting anything on wood, I'm probably doing honeycombs or spirals or something like that. But on that aspect though, Brian, yeah, if you want to do a red wine barrel or like a barrel aged red wine, I'm in.
All right. Maybe
I haven't done wine in a while, but yeah.
I'll do some shopping tomorrow or something. I've been looking at wine kits because Shannon's been talking about wanting to make wine for a while now. We haven't done one in, I can't even remember. I think like maybe that blueberry wine, like from however long ago was the last one we did, and that was at least 4 or 5 years ago. So
my last wine was the one we brewed for our wedding. I think that was my only wine. That
I just think how much better you could do these days.
Oh yeah,
knowing what you know now, compared to then.
Oh, for sure. That was not great wine. I'm sorry, everyone who
I really
was
liked
watching.
it. I don't remember anything bad about it. I drank the crap out of it. Maybe that's why I don't remember it.
That could be. yeah, but no, we still have like 6 or 7 bottles of it left. We've got enough to where we're opening one bottle every like 5 years until, I don't know, one of us dies or something like that. but yeah, I've been wanting to get back into doing some wines because that's like my wife is much more into wine than she is beer and cider and meads. So I could probably more easily get some time to do that if she's going to be able to partake a bit more.
I was just going to say, then she'd be totally into it too. Yeah.
Yep. I switched over. I had some Guinness left over from St. Pat's, so
there you go.
That's what I'm on now.
I was going to talk about this for a half sec too. Yeah, so it was the half gallon of the rest of our red project, cloud barrel blonde, and then I put it on 10 pounds of raspberries for 4 weeks. But before I did that, I stabilized it with potassium sorbate and potassium metabisulfite. So I didn't let the raspberries re-ferment, just to try to keep some of that sweetness and stuff. So the flavor that's in here, it's not fermented raspberry. It's more of like fresh raspberry. It's pretty nice.
Curious.
I don't know. Yeah, it's more sweet than maybe some people would like a sour beer. It's not super sweet, but it's definitely sweeter than
you get those sour characters though, like a little bit of that Brett, a little bit of that. Yeah, okay.
For being what it is, it's actually pretty clean. Like a lot of the complexity really only comes about like once you swallow and like retronasal and stuff like that. Part of that might be because I like carbonate the shit out of it. So when it hits your tongue, you get all those like tiny exploding bubbles. So it kind of sends off like all this like raspberry and tartness and stuff like that, and it makes it drink kind of clean. But then you burp, and it sort of has this nice sort of hay taste, I guess, followed by still more raspberry and
little earthy. Yeah. How much? So curious, since I'm still sitting on 5 gallons of a sour here, and presumably where I'm going to have another 4 or 5 gallons coming out of this. How much volume did 10 pounds of raspberries absorb?
None. In fact, it added.
Oh, okay. All right. Good.
Yeah. I think by the time I racked all this into a keg, I still probably could have racked another half gallon to a gallon off into something else. I didn't, just because I don't want to say I'm lazy, but just I wasn't prepared for it. And at that point in time, I just had other things to do. So I dumped what was left. But if anything, I think it added liquid.
Okay. All right.
Honestly.
Well, I mean, there's always going to be some loss and additions. So
one thing that you do have to account for, depending on the type of fruit that you use. So raspberries are really seedy, like small seeds. And when you are
that's a good point.
using those, you want to bag them somehow. So I have a oversized nylon bag that I use, again, specifically for my fruited beers, my fruited sours, that holds fruit. So I put all the fruit inside this bag and then rack the beer on top of the fruit, essentially. And then when I'm kegging it, I will rack from outside of that nylon bag. So all the seeds and shit kind of stay in that bag, and everything else, all the liquid comes through. I do that for my meat a lot too, and it works really well. You don't necessarily have to worry about that quite as much with non-small seedy fruit, like currants and blueberries are totally fine. But things like blackberries and raspberries, you probably want to use like a bag or something for. You will clog everything. All the things will get clogged. Yeah. So pro tip for using fruit right there. Use a bag for everything if you don't feel comfortable doing it, but for sure the small seedy ones.
I go back and forth with anytime I do dry hopping in a beer of just tossing the shit in or using a bag. And truth be told, I've never done like a side-by-side experiment of like a blonde ale. I'm just brewing a blonde and then dry hopping one loose and then one in the bag to actually see if there's a difference really between the two. But I've always kind of thought or felt like doing, just throwing it in and then filtering like as you're pulling the beer off is better. But I don't know. I mean, it should work. My thought?
Yeah.
Whether or not, so like you said, so should be relatively the same. So hops are going to have lots of small bits to them as they dissolve in the liquid. So whether or not you dry hop inside of say like a sock, not like a physical sock, like a hop sock, or a muslin bag or something like that, or just toss it in free into the beer. Like I've always felt like free floating adds more to the beer.
I'm with you. I'm totally with you. The bags that I use, they're as big as the fermenter, so it's not like they're.
Oh, that's okay. So that's a good point. That's a good, good.
Like it could line the entire fermenter. It's bigger than the fermenter. I stuffed the top of it like in a little bit. So it's just as free floating as it would be in the fermenter as if there wasn't a bag. It's just for when I want to rack it out, I can then sort of like move the bag aside and rack from outside of it.
Oh, so it's like pre-filtering kind of.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good distinction. I think we've covered this once before on this show in the almost 2 years that we've done it. But yeah, awesome. That's good to know.
No. I mean, repetition is fine.
Just trying to drive.
I will say too, something like hops will sort of clump and fall to the bottom and turn into kind of like a mush. And a lot of fruit mushes a little bit, but you still get annoyingly large pieces. It doesn't like turn into a slime quite as well as hops
fruit
do.
will suspend.
Yeah,
and Brian,
yeah.
you'll remember that my first lesson that was doing that raisin cider years and years ago. I don't know if you were on the thread when I sent a picture of it, and like raisins were like suspended in solution throughout the whole thing. It looked really eerie with like little yeast colonies on top of like this floating raisins inside this. Like they weren't like, yeah, they were suspended. It was kind of weird. But
That's the best of all yeast nutrients, right? Raisins.
Yeah.
that's what
right.
I've heard.
Yeah. Don't do it. Don't believe it.
Don't write that down, kids at home.
I like what Mark brought up. He said, with fruit, I'm not afraid of squeezing the bag, but with hops, I never do and rarely use a bag for the same reason. And I'm totally with you. And I want to talk about squeezing fruit too, because I think that there's good reason on both sides of the I don't want to say argument, but on both sides of the squeeze or don't squeeze fruit or press fruit argument. So and this mostly comes from my mead making experience, not necessarily like sour experience, but when you tend to press fruit in a mead, you tend to extract more tannins at the end. Like a lot of the extra like fruit pulp sort of stuff that might end up making it into your beverage a little bit more, which could be good or a bad thing depending on what it needs in order to like balance. Like if you have like a fruit mead, and I know we're getting off topic of sours here, but if you have like a fruit mead that you've tasted and it's like really tart and kind of one dimensional and you're like, blah, like I probably need to add some like grape tannin or wood to this or something. Like before you're done fully racking it, like totally squeeze that down a little bit more and get some of that extra, thickness out of that fruit. It might actually end up adding more roundness and character to the mead. And I'm assuming that might happen with beer too. I have never done it with my sour beer, but now I'm really curious because I feel like when I'm drinking this right now, and I've gotten feedback on a lot of my fruited sours that there is a lot of one dimensionality to it. And not that I mind it all the time, like this straight up tastes like raspberry sour beer. Like there's not a lot to be said for it, except that it tastes really good, but it's not complex. Maybe getting some of like the, complex like seedy characteristics from the raspberry would be really interesting for this. Just like fermenting with like cherry pits in a cherry beer can sometimes add tannins and complexity to that sort of beer. So I really like that recommendation on pressing fruits. I say do it to taste, but totally don't be afraid of it, because there's probably some complexity that can be added from doing it. But, depending on what you're making, again, like, with a meat or something like that, you don't potentially want it to be too tannic because then you have to go back and balance it out with, more sweetness or acid or something. So, no, I really like that. That's cool. I've never really even thought about that for sour beer before.
Cherry
There's
pits
just
are
again
poisonous. Kids at home.
No, they're not in small quantities. It's fine. It's fine. And add a lot of character to beer. It's what does it have? Is it
it's a cyanide?
No, it's cyanide. Yeah. Yeah.
Wait, what?
Yeah, cherry pits have cyanide in them.
Oh yeah. Yep.
I mean, you need a lot of them. To his point, you need a lot of them to do any real damage. But
just like, oh, what the fuck was it? Like, this is getting way off topic, but I think it's marigold seeds have like lysergic acid in it, like LSD or LSA.
I'm gonna text Shayna. She's ordering plants.
Yeah, exactly. Let's go raid the garden center here.
But it's the same thing. It's like poppy seeds having opium in it. You need a lot.
Yeah.
There's a good Mythbusters about that one, where they're eating all kinds of
what was
poppy
it?
seed muffins.
You'd need to eat like a bowl, like a whole bowl of it, like 3 or 4 cups of poppy seeds for it to actually turn up on and
like a drug screen or whatever.
Yeah.
Huh.
So that's not a good cover, like, just so everyone knows. Oh yeah, I had a poppy seed muffin for breakfast.
Welcome to Michigan Brews Drug Edition.
Yeah,
that's
we should have
we're giving
McQuillan
some
on and
good
do a
tips.
brewing with marijuana episode, because he's done it with great success.
Who's this?
There you go.
Matt.
Oh yes, yeah. No, that was a great beer. That
Should be saying this. I don't know. It's illegal in Michigan, so it's fine.
Yeah, but
it was really good. We had some
weed's legal. Is it legal to combine the two
on a homebrew level? Yes.
Cool. All right.
Yeah,
then let's do a show.
Not on a yeah, not commercially. Yeah, homebrew you can do whatever you want, pretty much.
That was good. I remember that at when we tried that. That was good. Good shit.
Yeah. I might still have that's what scares me, is that I have a lot of unlabeled beer in my basement, and I know one of these days, like, I'm gonna crack open beers and one of those is gonna be like MJ IPA is what he called it.
So I don't know. I think if before you do an episode, see what Facebook's deal is on that, because
really
I have a feeling, I don't know, because they're a national company, right, or a worldwide company. But,
okay.
So I don't know how that.
No, that's a really good point.
That's a fair point. Yeah,
I've seen YouTube take down content for probably
that's kind of
less
what I mean.
Crappy things. Yeah. So okay.
But then again, YouTube will allow reviews on like weed vapes.
Fair.
At least I thought they did.
But the equipment,
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's the whole thing, right? Because like the vape pen is probably legal because you could put, I don't know.
Beer is legal, so that's our vessel.
Yeah.
Our argument made.
I don't know how that
YouTube,
works.
Come after me.
Bring it.
I don't know how that works.
I'm out of sour beer. I drank that too fast. It was too good. Do I do a Consecrator Doppelbock or a mystery beer?
Ooh.
Oh, I'm gonna vote mystery beer every time. Although Consecrator's good shit.
Yeah, I haven't had one of those in a while. That's like the Fat Tuesday beer, right?
When yeah. When I'm in need of a Keyser space, I typically bottle off like a 6-pack of my lowest beer. Can you guys still hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
Of my lowest beer, and then dump the rest of the keg. As long as it's not too low, I'm not going to dump like a half a keg of like New England IPA or something. I can't find my bottle.
All right, I got a question back to sour beers.
Yeah, let's go.
If I take my 5 gallons out of the barrel, I've never made a dry hop sour. So, what is your recommendations?
I wish Bill Blakesley was on, because he's done more dry hop sours than anybody else I know, and I have not done a single one.
Okay.
Have you, Jordan?
No, I've dry hopped a Philly, but that doesn't really count.
Okay. Are you thinking like quantities, Drew? Like how many like how much you should use as far as like, hops, like ounces or?
Yeah, and I guess I'd be curious, like, what's the experience like? Should I be transferring from the barrel to like a secondary vessel before the keg because it's going to be a big mess in the keg, or should I dry hop in the keg? And I guess that goes back to quantities. How much do I need to use to get the right
I've never been a fan of keg hopping, and I know that there are a ton of people that are. That's only because I don't feel like messing with it. It probably spawns more out of like laziness for me. But I think if you were to like throw 2 ounces of like a Cascade or something like that, or Citra into a hot bag and throw that into a keg and then rack on top of that, I think that'd be delicious and it'd probably work out fine. Um, I also think that you could probably do the same thing in your secondary fermenter and then cold crash it and then just rack into the keg. The only thing that I worry about is sour beer gets drank way more slowly at my house than other beer does. So I'd worry with kegs or with hops in the with kegs in the hops, with hops in the keg that it might develop far more of like a grassiness than it would in something like an IPA that might be gone after 3 weeks or something.
Okay, so your issue is there's not really hopping in the keg; it's just longevity on the hops.
I think so, and especially if you're like, man, I'm really sick of this beer, or I need keg space, and you're like, this beer is fine. Like I can, and I do this with my sours too. I will take them off tap, set them aside, come back to them in 6 months, put them back on tap again. If I'm doing that with hops in the keg, then you're literally sitting with sour beer in your keg on hops for half a year. It's like, what's that going to do to it? So if you can plan and that you're going to drink it all or bottle it all off before too long, I'd say fine, go for it. But I think that maybe the optimal approach would be to hop in the fermenter and then keg.
Okay, I would agree with that. Yeah, I usually hop directly in primary if I'm dry hopping. But if I wanted to dry hop in a keg, it's not, the hops aren't going to stay in there. I mean, unless it's something I'm just absolutely smashing. After, probably a week, 2 at max, I'm probably going to pull that stuff out. Meaning I'm either going to have one of those specialty lids that has a little hook on it, whatever, where I can pull all that stuff out.
Yeah, those are cool.
I feel like I saw something the other day where a guy had ran a string out through the lid or something.
I've done that twice, and didn't work very well. I ended up getting CO2 leaks.
Oh, no.
Yeah. I mean, and I
Gotcha.
like I caked that shit with, keg sealer and whatnot. I couldn't get it worked out. That's just me. I've read people have had success with that, and it seals perfectly fine, and they're good. So don't take my experience as like the end all. But yeah. So that's honestly what really pushed me to just try. Dry hopping directly in the primary fermenter.
Maybe you got to run the string on the inside of the gasket instead of the outside, so the gasket still gets a good seal or something. I don't know.
That could be. That seems like a lot of hassle, though, taking the gasket off and then and I did a lot of research on this when I was trying to. It was like, okay, well, you want to tie it off with floss and make sure to use the flat floss that's unflavored. Like, obviously, you don't want mint in your beer, and I did all that, and it's still just I couldn't get a good seal. Maybe my gaskets were bad, but the keg sealed after I pulled all that shit off. So just couldn't have. I mean, that's part of the journey of brewing. You're gonna run into shit that is just like, this is how my system works for some reason.
Totally.
And you're going to have different experiences from you may have different experiences from the majority of people. Like that. Like I've read a lot of people having success with, dry hopping in the keg using floss and just running that string out through the top of the fermenter, and the gasket seals fine. Didn't happen well for me. Had 2 beers where I was having leaks. Thankfully, it wasn't anything catastrophic because I was watching it. But I've had a few instances like that where there's just things haven't worked out quite as well as people have said they would. So just experiment with it, and if it's not working for you, try something different.
I mean, I was just going to say the lids with the hooks is kind of an industry standard too.
Yep.
Like, I mean, bright tanks have very similar contraptions, so that's kind of the tried and true method, really.
Yep. I'll be honest, the only reason I decided I wasn't going to do that is because I think at the time the lids were like $35 or something like that.
Yeah,
or $30, and I was just like, I'm not going to spring that much for the lid. And I think now they've gone down to like $15-$20. At least this from what I thought I saw something on like Homebrew Finds recently. There was like, it was like $18 for a lid. And I'm like, I might pick up one or two of them just so I can have them as, dry hopping lids. But at the same time, like, I feel like I get decent results just dry hopping directly in the fermenter. So
yeah,
why spend the money? Outside of just, maybe one lid would just kind of be like, oh, well, I can experiment and maybe do a back-to-back, but I'm not brewing that much right now. So trying to get back into it slowly.
Oh, not off topic.
Oh,
Brandon was drinking a concentrator.
Good choice, Brandon.
Maybe I should have. But no, my advice goes for other things too besides hops. Vanilla or spices or stuff like that too. I feel like it's just easier to deal with it when it's in the fermenter than it is in the keg. I mean, that's sort of the end of it.
I don't know if I would ever toss vanilla in the keg just because the insides of those beans have so much.
Oh, I never even thought about that.
Weird shit.
Yeah.
So, and not only that, but there's oils and that stuff.
Okay.
So you don't want that like draining down and then leaving that, potentially leaving a residue on the outside. You should be cleaning your kegs, but still, you could leave a little bit there, and then your next beer might have a little bit of vanilla.
Yep. Drew, I don't know why I never thought about this. I see you pouring beer out of your howler there. I never thought about, for some reason, it's been years. How long we've done the show now? 71 episodes, and I've never thought about packing my beer up in like one of my howlers just to bring up like to the show to drink.
We're like 2 months away from 2 years.
Yeah, I know. I don't know why I never thought about that. My mind is like blown right now. I
gotta go down 2 flights of stairs to get more beer. So
I'm surprised
on normal nights.
Not usually, because I need to get out of my chair and but I'm here to talk beer, so I'm trying to maximize that effort.
What were you going to say before I interrupted you with my
No, I was just
musings.
Me?
Yeah, someone. I don't know. I'm like on my 4th beer.
Yeah. No, I just finished up. I'm about to go fill up again, but okay. I was just gonna say I'm surprised that we don't have like taps ran to our fucking desks at this point. Like, just run over and be like, I just pull some off right here, and
it'd be too easy to drink while working. I need some sort of deterrent.
You work from home.
I think what I was
gonna know.
Yeah, I was gonna say something. So I guess one downside to putting stuff directly in the keg is you're kind of handcuffing yourself a little bit when you're adding these like flavor based additions, because there's 2 things you can control, right? One's quantity and one is time. And you're getting rid of time if you toss it in the keg, assuming you have no way to get it out of there, to your point earlier. So like vanilla beans, most of the time I like this beer here, I'm only doing this is my coffee vanilla milk stout here. but
looks good.
I'm only doing like maybe like 4 to 5 days on the beans. There's no way I would kill a keg of this in 4 to 5 days. You know?
Sure. Yeah.
So,
Yep. 100%. Did you get more hydromel or are you drinking water?
No, this is cider, man.
Oh.
I was
It's
just
very-
thinking
it's
that
very
too as I
pretty.
pulled it out. I'm like,
Yeah.
like that's pretty clear.
yeah.
But I've got 2 ciders on tap right now, both pretty much straight fermented with 2 different types of yeast, and just kind of going in between the two and getting a feel for how they really came out. Specifically since they've been sitting in the kegs for a couple months now. And it's weird. Like when I've got one that was the one on right now that was using it was called cider yeast.
Is that like a White Labs? Or...
Saf cider, I think is what it was.
Oh, Saf cider.
Yeah.
Yeah, who used it this year? Yeah.
And then this one's using 1118. And usually I go with 71B for my ciders, and I couldn't really find it this year. At least at the time that I was, we were picking up cider. I'm going to be stocking up on it this year. So I'm sorry if people can't find much of it.
I keep stock on hand too. I'm with you.
Yeah.
I like that yeast.
Yep. But like usually, like those wine yeast or those champagne yeasts is what I prefer. But now that I'm like I just had the Saf cider, and that was pretty good. Maybe a touch on the acidic side, but the nose was great. It just tasted like you cut into a fresh apple. And this one, the 1118, definitely a little more like, I don't know, it's like it's kind of like fresh apple, but I'm almost getting a touch of sulfur on it, which I don't feel like I got beforehand. So I don't know if that's like, I usually felt like sulfur drove off as time went on, but I don't know. It's not bad. It's not bad at all. And it's just trace amounts, but here we go.
I didn't realize you hadn't tasted it yet.
Nope. No sulfur on the flavor.
You're not coughing. Yeah.
Yeah. Very, very clean.
Cool.
Like, wow. It's almost just like a hint of apple. I don't know. I wanna submit one of these to Glint Cap just to see what happens with them. Just to get some,
you're not gonna get any better cider feedback than from Glint Cap.
Well, exactly, and that's what I want. I want
totally.
the good feedback. I'm not expecting medals or anything like that. It's just I want that feedback. So maybe I'll send both of them and see what happens. But it's wild. And I know we've talked about this before, Brian, at the risk of duplicating things, but it's wild how different these two things turned out, even though really the only difference is the yeast.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, it's hard to quantify, an amount, or a percentage of flavor that the yeast contributes to, any particular beverage or anything, but it's pretty fucking huge. Like it's pretty big,
Yeah,
like,
yeah, it really is.
Whether it be end flavor or off flavor or, whatever random end characteristics or something like that. Like you brew the same wort with, Hefeweizen yeast versus like clean American yeast or something, and you're going to get two completely different beers despite changing just one ingredient. So yeah, I think we probably should do a yeast episode someday. I don't know how we would do it. That would take some ideation or something, but
I feel like we'd have to like almost go specific to style.
We'd probably want to do an experiment first and have a show on the experiment.
That's a good, yeah.
So maybe we can think on that for some point in the future. But yeah, it's super crazy.
Belgians would be a great thing to look at for that one.
I do love Belgians.
I mean, there's so much yeast character in Belgians.
And you can go both sides of the spectrum too, like Lutra, the complete absence of yeast character, the point where it's like, what the fuck am I drinking? Like it's too clean for me. A lot of beers I've had with Lutra, like they're lacking drinkability because there's no character sometimes, it just it depends.
Now I want to brew a cider with Lutra.
I totally wonder.
Like,
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I guess that's why they use it for hard seltzer a lot, right?
Totally.
I mean,
Yep.
Well, exactly, because it's so clean. But like, 1118 from my knowledge is supposed to be quite a clean white wine yeast as well to help bring out the flavor of those grapes. But I'm curious now. I don't know. I enjoy brewing ciders. That's why I usually get like 15 to 25 gallons whenever we start getting fresh press.
Yep.
And it's really fun to experiment because you know for certain, like you buy it all at once, for certain you're getting the same product. Like throughout, if you're getting 4 or 5, 3-4 batches, we'll say, 15, 20 gallons, and you pitch different yeasts in each one. It's just very interesting to see the way that the yeasts perform.
Do you have any 1 gallon fermenters?
I do. I've got a couple of them.
You have a
I
few
don't
too?
I don't have as many as I wanted.
I bet I have 4 or 5 of them, maybe.
Maybe we can pull together fermenters and do a cider experiment in the fall or something.
That would be wonderful. I'd love to.
You could do
dial it in a little bit.
Yeast is crazy because you could do a whole thing on one yeast strain at 4 different temperatures.
Oh yeah.
And get wildly different flavors too.
Yep.
You could even take that, and you could take that optimal temperature and then space it across 4 different styles. And be like, okay, well, it's gonna be better in this, or take that optimal temperature and be like, okay, we're gonna do a beer, we're gonna do a cider, we're gonna do a seltzer, and we're gonna do a cider.
You got like probably like 6 shows if you really want to.
Welcome to the new op show. This is Michigan Yeasts. No,
we've been off topic on sours for 15 minutes now, but I think that's expected at the end of a lot of our shows. So that's okay.
Yeah.
Did anybody else have anything they want to cover on sours before we either continue being off topic or whatever we end up doing? And that includes people from chat too.
That's true. Oh,
Siri says my topic on Sawyer and sours for my I set an alarm apparently for 9:24 p.m. somehow. So okay,
sweet.
Oh, all right. I do have a question for you guys, for you two, and this is just personal. Do you prefer like single culture sours or mixed? And then where do you think Philly fits into all that?
I'll let you go, Drew.
Oh, I was gonna say you could always talk about Philly because that's if somebody wants to try a sour but not potentially infect their equipment, like that's a great option to play around with. But geez, I don't know. I'm pretty partial to Brett, I guess. Like if I'm gonna go sour, I'm gonna go hard horse blanket sour. Like
well, so Brett doesn't produce, acid. So you want that just to balance out like the acid or something. Yeah.
I mean lacto and Brett, I guess.
Like, yeah, okay. Yeah. I'm torn. I think each has their merit. I'm glad that, quote unquote, the new straight sour is what the category is called now in the 2021 BJCP guidelines. But I'm glad that like clean lactic acid sours are a thing as a base beer for like fruited beers, because
Is that where Philly sits?
probably. I bet it would. Yeah, I bet it would. Because it allows sour beer to be available as a base for experimentation. You have people making sour beer with like fruit and chocolate and vanilla to replicate like a Tootsie Roll Pop or something like Wax Wings. Or just have, like the one I had last week, the caramel apple pie sour.
Right.
People can put together these beers in like 2 or 3 weeks, and if it sucks, then I mean it sucks. It's fine. You didn't waste a year making this beer, sour and complex, only to add your spices and fruit and whatever and fuck the thing up. So there's merit to that style of beer for sure, but there's also like this really nice, sippable complexity to mixed cultures that it's just so interesting, right? Like every time you open a bottle, you're like, I've never had this before, because it's always different. Like every batch of the same beer year after year could be totally different, and it's fun. And that the people that brewed it had fun too, because they didn't know really what was going to come out of it. And I think that's really fun. It's a fun aspect of brewing it too, because you come back to a beer like a year later, you're like, all right, what do we got? What are we gonna do? And if it's like really awesome, yeah, you totally like it, say it's like really tart, and maybe like a little bready or something like that. You're like, oh, sweet. Like I have this like really basic beer that didn't actually get as tart as I wanted it, that I can blend this with now or something. No, it goes back to blending again.
So what I'm hearing is that it's kind of dependent on like what your mood is, whether or not you want like a specific flavor, or if you're chasing that novelty.
If you're feeling like doing some fist pumping, grab yourself like a fruited sour and
hell yeah,
beer bong it and do whatever. And, no,
well, people who like don't like beer or haven't been
that's a great
to
point,
beer,
Drew. Yeah.
Lambics, like fruited lambics, will blow their mind. In my experience, like I've
old style as well.
I can think of like probably 4 or 5 different people I know that like are not beer drinkers, but you give them like Lindemann's cherry lambic or something, or raspberry, or just like,
and so that beer is, it's really really sweet too. Like and so again, a lot of those fruited sours are too, but they're also really low ABV. I think those are like 2.5%.
Yep.
So it's basically like drinking, juice,
beer.
Yeah, I know, but it's beer. It's totally
the base
beer.
Is a wild
and
sour,
it's delicious.
Though.
It's fucking delicious. Yeah,
so
you'd be hard pressed to replicate it.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. Like this is like specifically those things. Like I believe it's Lindemann's, and from Bonnell or other variants. They're produced in a very specific valley in Belgium that is protected because they use like open cool ship fermenting, and like the yeast is just naturally occurring there, and that's how it happened. Like they don't inoculate, or from my reading, if somebody else has been there. I wanted to go to Belgium when I was in the Netherlands, but we didn't get a chance to go down. But yeah, I mean the whole process of those like ancient Belgians, I don't know, fascinating to me. Although they are like super low ABV.
We didn't even get into wild spontaneous fermentation and shit like that. We
Oh,
probably
that's a
could have
whole
That's a whole episode.
Yeah.
Sure.
probably, and a lot of shit I don't know about. I've never done it before, but Drew sort of has. And maybe since this is sort of related to the topic, do you want to tell us about your
Oh,
Quetico
yes.
trip and your yeast harvesting and stuff?
Sure. Yeah. So of course, you can harvest yeast out of your local fruit orchard or whatever. But I had bought a kit off of Bootleg Biology to kind of do like the yeast wrangling thing. But because we were taking a trip up to like the Boundary Waters, so just north of Minnesota on the Ontario side, there's a park called Quetico, and it's basically just a string of lakes. You kind of portage between them. Very, very remote. I mean, you can like literally like drink water right out of the lakes. Like it's very untouched in that regard. I was like, oh, like maybe I got some Q-tips that were like sealable for like taking like DNA samples from like a murder scene or something like
Readily
because I was
available
looking for
on Amazon.
yeah. And I'm probably on a list now because I'm
Yeah.
like but no, like I was looking for something lightweight and I'm like this is interesting. So and I wrote a blog about this for on the Keepers page, but basically each lake that we were canoeing in, we would kind of try and look for, we'd stop for a lunch spot or something, and we'd be looking around for like wildflowers or Molly, my wife, is like amazing at finding like wild fruit and stuff, like because we have a lot of fruit on our property and she's always out there picking things. But so anyway, we found things like wild blueberries and wild strawberry plants, lots of different flowers. So I would just kind of take pictures of things, and then I'd take a little swab and seal it off, and then packed it in my backpack, and made a note of kind of roughly where I was on the lake that we were on and that kind of thing. But the idea behind it was basically that, like, guaranteed nobody's ever harvested yeast out there to try and start, some kind of beer yeast or something.
Yeah, sure.
And it ended up, I took it home. I made up little vials with a very like neutral, low gravity wort in them, and kind of saw what they did. Obviously, I don't have lots of awesome equipment to isolate and things like you properly would do if you were a yeast lab, but some of them look like war crimes when they were done. They were like mold and whatever. A couple of them look fairly normal, kind of pellicly. Just kind of the white bubble film on top. I ended up stepping those up and just seeing what they did. But then by the end of it, honestly, like I was like, man, the smell and stuff is, I'm not feeling the vibe. Like,
Yep, totally.
I was like, well, if I wanted to make a Cheeto beer, like, I guess I could.
Did
But
you have one that smelled like Cheetos?
kind of, yeah.
Really?
Dude, that has there's a market there, man.
Yeah, there's totally
Like-
potential there. The whole gamer market.
I got to go back to Quetico to get it again, I guess.
So
Yeah.
so I'm curious because I missed it. I had to head to the bathroom and get some more. Got hydromel this time. Also very very clear.
In your bathroom?
Yeah, I got taps in my bathroom. That's I mean
I was wondering how
You
you
just
filled
pissed in
that
a glass,
glass for a second.
Yeah, exactly.
no, my kegerator's like on my way to my office, so it's just like head to the bathroom, set the glass on the kegerator, come back down, just take a pull. Anyways, Drew, a question for you. So when you now we probably discussed this when you did it earlier. you took your swabs and then you just inoculated your little vials, right? Okay, so should you go back, I'd love to work with you on this if you end up going up there again. I think we should get auger plates, so that way we can isolate specific colonies of different types of bacteria. Maybe get 12, 24 different plates.
You have a background in doing this, don't you, Jordan?
Yes. Yeah. Well,
okay.
yeah.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
That's so auger plates are like they're petri dishes. So you fill those with like a gelatin nutrient solution based off of the type of microbe that you want to isolate. And essentially what you do is you do this like zigzag type swab across them to try to create specific isolated colonies of microbes. So different microbes will grow in different formations and colors, so on and so forth, that you can then identify them by. So by doing so, so what you did was essentially a mixed culture and just allowed whatever was the strongest to take over. That doesn't necessarily mean that there's not something worthwhile culturing that's up in Quetico, because I fully believe that there probably is something that could create something that's probably palatable up there. But if we did like an auger plate, did a few of those and incubated them and allowed them to actually grow, then we could actually isolate specific colonies and then test single colony solutions on their fermentation capabilities. That's how you're going to isolate like a specific yeast type.
Yeah, I would love to do that.
That's so cool.
I'm sure the way I went about culturing up and all that, I was kind of winging things. But the fun part for me was harvesting, probably anyway. So it sounds like you and I could get together and have some fun with it.
Let's do it. Let's get a Quetico yeast going.
You never know. It could be like the next Philly sour yeast. Like,
well, that's yeah.
Nobody's ever. I mean, I doubt anybody's ever harvested yeast out there because it's the middle of freaking nowhere.
Well, exactly. And since it's so isolated, it means that it's probably rich in its microbiome. So we'd probably have a number of different isolations that we could test.
My alarm, my 924 alarm is going off.
924 is that?
Sawyer and Silas for your.
We made blueberry pancakes with the wild blueberries, and they were amazing. So I can confirm that much.
Honestly, it probably worth. Did you cultured from the wild blueberries?
Yeah. Okay. From on the outside of them, kind of swabbed them around.
Interesting. I kind of wonder, just going off the top of my head, if it would be best to step up the cultures the way that you did it and then auger plate them.
I think it is.
I got that part of it from Bootleg Biology, I think, like one of their blogs, and then, but I didn't go the full auger plate like you're describing. No.
Yeah. Yep. That's probably the way to do it. So that way you can isolate and test specific cultures, because like what'll happen is that they'll grow in like these nice little discs on the auger plate as long as you do your streaks right, and you do your sanitation again in this type of thing, just like in brewing, huge. But man, yeah, you're getting my like collegiate, like, oh, I did this shit in college, like this is exciting, like, you go back, take more cultures. We'll do it. I'll help you out.
Yeah, you're not going to be hauling the lab equipment out there, but good thing. No, I mean, you're packing everything out on your back. So
I mean, a fire could probably work as an autoclave, but that's about it.
Yeah.
So the Milk the Funk podcast, episode 5, is about bioprospecting. And it's well worth listening to. It would probably be right up the alley of this discussion.
Yep. And for anybody who's listening and curious, yeast is probably the most abundant organism on the planet. One of. So it's everywhere. I mean, it's on your bushes outside your house.
It's on my mustache right now.
Yep, it is. Yeah. No, that's.
I just got to get you guys to come with me, and you can help me haul crap around. That's the real answer,
dude.
No.
No. like I said, my wife and I, we want to go. Then we had a kid. Doesn't mean we don't want to go. We just
right? No,
we
yeah,
we gotta get it planned out properly. And yeah, I go out there with you. Yeah, I'll take some swabs. We'll
swab it up.
we'll get some shit brought back.
Well, we got anything else we want to cover tonight?
I mean, outside
We
of
did a lot of it.
Yeah, the like 6 different shows that we discussed that we needed to.
Yeah, we got some ideas.
Yeah, we got a ton of ideas. Now we'll bring it back to Jason if he doesn't listen to the episode. We'll see. Jordan, do you end up listening to these episodes later on? Like,
I've listened to a couple of them.
Do you subscribe to our podcast?
I do.
Okay, all right.
I do subscribe.
For those listening that aren't subscribed to our podcast, please check it out. Leave a review for us. It'll help us get pop up higher, I guess, on the lists. And feel free to leave a review. You know, if you think we're shit, that's fine. We're gonna put on the show anyway and be really shitty for you. So, but if you love us,
can the users review specific episodes?
I don't know. I don't think so. But call out specific episodes. I would love to know what really annoyed you.
Can I get the podcast on my Jitterbug? Or
yeah, I think Jitterbug. It's called the Pudding Cast app or something like that, or Tapioca Cast. I think something like that. Yeah.
Flip phones are making a comeback. I read that the other day. Like they're
all gonna fail. OLED screens that fold in half are dumb. This is gonna age really well, but I think we'll see.
No, I think you're right. I think the folding is a problem. Bending isn't an issue.
No, I'm talking like straight up, like, you know, Motorola Razr, like even like pre-touch screen is like making a comeback because like the 90s fashion is in again.
They're dumb.
Wait, so I've got a bunch of cell phones I'm sitting on that I could probably sell for some money now.
Probably.
You should totally look into
pull out your Jinko jeans.
Yeah.
You can sell that stuff, dude. It's like the kids are into it. I'm telling you.
Retire off my Razor, Jinkos, and Pokemon cards.
Yes. Yes.
Way off topic.
No.
So the next couple episodes, we still have Siren of Stout coming on. We're trying to get her on. We still have Puck Cider at some point in time. Glint Cap's coming up soon. So, you know, we definitely want to have another cider episode. I reached out to Ken Trim again. I sort of blew my chance over the winter. He is super busy right now. And he totally gave us the opportunity to come out there and talk to him while he works. And I'm like, dude, like, you should concentrate on your work while you're working. Like, I don't need to be out there bugging you and asking you questions and stuff like that. So it was very gracious offer of him that I'm not going to take him up on, because that's too much. So their farm is busy right now. Oh, what's going on?
I was just gonna say, but maybe, you know, I don't know if since it's, you know, it's Ken Schramm, maybe we could do a show about their operation and whatnot that they have going on. You know, something that, because we've been talking about doing these offline shows a few times. Maybe that's something that we showcase. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we can. I would guarantee you, if I reached out to Schramm's in general, we could get, you know, one of their employees on, maybe like one of his daughters or something like that. So, that could be something we can definitely look into. If that's something that interests you guys, let us know. I definitely want to do that. We got NHC coming up in quite a few months that we'll be talking about. We're going to be out at Big Brew Day over on the east side of Michigan, making some beer at some point in time. So we got a bunch of things coming up. Appreciate you guys.
What date is Big Brew Day?
It's the official AHA Big Brew Day is May 7th, but the the named event that is sort of not actually associated with the Big Brew Day event that we're talking about, I think I want to say the 21st or the 28th. I got to look that up. It's near the end of May. So we'll be out there with Matt Ushman. Matt's going to be out there and he wants to hang out with us. So that'd be cool. And yeah.
It's the 25th annual.
Yeah. Is it?
Yeah.
All right.
Google
Beautiful. Thank you guys for sticking with us for a whole 2 hours. Happy Oberon Day. And yeah, if you're not subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do. If you're not subscribed to our podcast, please leave a review. And that's all the begging we'll do. But cheers, everyone. I'm at the end of my beer here.
Cheers.
And
thanks for
not sure if we'll
me.
be back next week. We'll be in touch. But Drew, yeah, thank you so much for being on with us tonight, man. Hey, yeah, Drew, before we go, do you want to tell us a little bit about your brewery? How about I don't, fuck you for coming on the entire episode and not talking about your brewery the entire time? How about I don't do that?
I'm wearing the shirt. I guess you can't really see it because of the name tag. There you go.
Love the logo, by the way.
Thanks. Yeah. So the big news today. I was without power here for about 4 or 5 hours.
Oh shit!
But they were upgrading my power, so now I've got a full 200 amps out to the brewery, which is going to make my electric brewing setup work like it's supposed to.
Cool.
So that's kind of the big news. Still working on my control panel, but should have a nice 3-barrel electric brewery set up here soon. Yeah, I don't know.
All your licensing's in place. You can. You are a brewery.
I am a brewery. Yep.
Awesome, dude.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I guess for everybody who, may be new listening at this episode, Drew and Doster Brewing, you've set this up on your property, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So, funny enough, when we bought this place, there was a pole barn back here that was kind of in rough shape. Had been sort of a horse barn at one point. And it looks completely different. Spent, I guess, almost like 3 years remodeling it now. And we poured floors, we insulated, we did interior. We dug a well for the brewery, upgraded the power going out there, just a ton of different things. It's been a real labor of love, and but now we're really close to having the big system up and running. So yeah, I mean it's going to be a production facility for now. So kegs and cans. I think we're going to have a big emphasis on sort of specialty things. Like I know we spent all night talking about barrels and things. So but that is a passion of mine. Probably more so on like the bourbon and rum, sort of the spirit aged, beers. But yeah, just excited to finally get things up and running, and we're real close.
Then I'm happy for you, man. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you for coming on. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to drag you to the end of the show to let you, talk about that and stuff. I mean, I'm all about, abusing our guests and using them for their knowledge, until the end of the show.
Yeah.
But
I still have this sour barrel, so you got to be nice to me.
That's fair. All right. We got you. Well, Jordan, Drew, and everybody else watching, thank you for being with us. And hopefully we'll catch you next week. Not 100% sure yet, but we will figure it out. But until then, yeah, my beer's empty, but cheers everyone.
Cheers.
Cheers.